And I'm going to talk to you a little bit next about the course, about what awake living is. And again, this course came from really the collective evolution of the sort of body of work at yogahealer.com. When I started Yoga Healer in 2001, it was funny. I was in San Francisco with my husband, and he wasn't my husband yet. We lived together for a long time before we got married. We were living in San Francisco. I was finishing Ayurveda school and yoga school, and I'm like, sweetie, I need a domain. And he's like, yeah, you do. I'm like, how about Ayur Yogi? And he's like, no one will get it. And so we settled on Yoga Healer. And I work traded with a guy who was a web developer and had back pain. I was like, I'll help you out of back pain if you teach me how to develop my own website. And he did. He came over and he tutored me in Dreamweaver. And the dream was born, right? And I just started from that place of building, of seeing like, hey, who's interested in this and that? I started teaching courses like the 10 Habits of a Yogi, which has transformed into my book Body Thrive, transformed into the core curriculum at Yoga Health Coaching over the last, 16 years. It's kind of nuts. So what the course of Awake Living, how that came about is people were just seeing like, Cate, how could, it's like, how are you doing this? Like your body looks better every year. We know you're making more money every year. All of us who are involved in these courses are really excited about what we're doing more and more every year. Like, how are you doing all this? Your team gets stronger and more competent every year. You seem to have time. You go on a lot of vacation. You surf a lot. Like, what are you doing? I was like, well, okay, I guess I'll teach you what I've learned. And of course, as we start to teach what we've learned, it morphs in itself, right? It starts to actually go through its own Agni. It goes through its own digestive fire. And we start to be able to refine. And that's what's happened with the Awake Living curriculum. As you may have guessed, it's based on the 7 capacities. It's based on these 5 elemental competencies. And so what you actually do in Awake Living, it's a very hands-on, you are going to get these capacities, you're going to develop these competencies, you are going to be a much more multi-empowered version of yourself, you're going to be much more clear on your dream, and you're going to be putting your dream into action step by step by step. And that's really what the Awake Living course experience is all about. You're going to become a master of your space, and you're literally going to go through every item in your space, and you're going to decide, like, is this aligned with the person I'm becoming or not? And for those like me who have family, who don't live in a little bubble, right, but have other people's stuff and whatnot, you're going to navigate shared space and what it looks like to actually elevate shared space. You're going to refine your values of exactly what are your values, your unique values, right? In a way that is akin to your unique language. And this has everything to do with grounding the dream, around making future decisions about how do you make a dream possible. What happens when you come to the crux, and if you are attuned to making a dream happen, making something that's unreal into real, you are going to come to cruxes in the road. I promise you that, right? So at that crux, how do you make a decision? If you haven't given unique language to your core values, it's much harder to make that decision, and you actually risk making the wrong decision. And if you make the wrong decision, no, it's not like all hell breaks loose, but it slows you down, and it actually increases doubt instead of increasing trust. And that's the last thing I want for you, right? So I'm going to walk you step by step in the process of how do you awaken your dream, so that you actually get very, very clear on what your dream is, on who you're becoming next. We identify the capacities that you're going to need to develop to do that. We identify the competencies that you're going to need to do that, and you start to walk that path. So you refine your space, right? And that alone will shift you. So soon you're going to be living in an environment that actually pulls you into your dream. It pulls your future self into your present self. And if you've never experienced that, it's kind of amazing. It's sort of bizarre at first. You're like, what is happening here? And you start to live in a rarefied atmosphere of the energy of your potential. So many people live in a regressive atmosphere that actually like pulls them back, right? So when you actually get pulled forward into your potential, rapid evolution happens, right? I love the phrase exponential evolution happens. And that's where all of a sudden, like, you start to make dreams into reality on a fast clip. That's where it gets really exciting. But we're going to take baby steps to getting there, unless you're ready for that. Okay, So space. Number 2, time. You're going to become a master of your own time. And for some people, this is a massive overhaul program. For others, it's a refinement. I don't know what it is for you. If you're not living your ideal calendar, this is going to be a massive overhaul. If you're pretty close to it, there's going to be some refinements, some attunements that start to push that edge of exponential growth. You're going to become a master of Dharma, of being, remember that 7th chakra, like your Dharma conduit? So you're going to be much more connected to what your Dharma is. Your intuitive capacities are going to increase. You're going to, in many ways, like hear the call and heed the call. You're going to accept the challenge. And you're going to accept the challenge into a place of surrender of like, I have no idea who I'm going to become to master this challenge. I have no idea, right? Actually, I have some inkling. I'm going to need this skill I don't have yet. I'm going to need to develop these relationships I don't have yet. And I can sense these things, and then I also know enough to know that I don't know it all. And that's exactly where you need to be in the Dharmic skills, right? And I'll teach you competencies about how to actually start to trust into the process, to trust into the friction, right? The friction of becoming someone you've never been before. The friction of starting to stand in the truth of your own native genius, and the kind of protective mechanisms you're going to have to use in terms of your time and your time structure and your space in order for that to become much, much more strong in you and much deeper power in you. With flow, you're going to start to align. Like, what is flow? Like, what does that even feel like to live a life aligned and flow, so that I flow through my day, so that I'm actually in an experience of relaxed awareness through my own evolution, right? And for many of us, it's like, wow, this whole thing sounds kind of stressful. Like, I got to bend space and time and, have a greater capacity. Like, okay, I know. How am I going to do that in a way that's like pretty fluid and chill? There's a phrase I use myself personally. I call the big ah. And if I'm not in the big ah, if I'm not just like totally sort of like blown away by my everyday reality, and if I'm not allowing the universal energy to actually carry the action forward through me, then I'm out of flow. So I use that as a detector, right? I use that as a way that I can make a judgment, snap out of it, be like, okay, this is just going to happen. This is just going to flow through me. And as that happens, a whole other thing starts to happen. And other people get a hit and they start to relax. They go from stressful to easeful. And when that happens, it's good for everyone. Now we're less in an emergency. We're starting to access the deep presence. We talked in the first video about this root chakra capacity to be grounded in deep presence, right? Is your presence grounder expanding? Is that capacity getting stronger? Are you attuned to desire? Are you in joy, right? Are you living your life in joy? Or does it seem like too many days at the end of the day, you're like, what happened? And what do I have to do tomorrow? That's the opposite of flow. So in this experience of awake living, you're going to become a master of flow. And then lastly, the body component. Every awake living member gets access to Body Thrive. It's so, so important that you have the habits and you understand habit evolution, or how you actually morph the habits you have now into the habits that'll support your physiology, into this experience of dynamically aiming towards an awake, agile longevity, right? And so there's skills, there's habits that go with that. It's its own separate course, and it's an automatic part of awake living that you get that. It's a big component, and I want to make sure that everybody has these capacities and these competencies with the body habits from Ayurveda and yoga that make all the difference in how you feel day to day and how you're going to feel next year and the next year and the next decade and the next decade. So that gives you a little bit of a hit into what awake living is all about. It's about getting clear on your dream and making dreams happen in real time. So the only way to get into awake living is to have a dream conversation. So if you are interested in finding out more about your dream and whether or not this course can really support that into action, you're going to go to yogahealer.com/dream, DREAM. You're going to fill out that form. You're going to schedule your call. And you're going to talk to one of my amazing team members. These are very, deep listeners over there, and they're going to actually help pull your dream out of you. They're going to hear between the lines. They're actually going to hear for where you're filtering your own dream out, where you're taking your big dream and actually filtering it smaller. They're going to listen for all that stuff, and they're going to start to be able to help you realize, like, what is this bigger dream? How are you wanting to experience your life? What is the next phase of you? Who are you becoming next? Who do you want to become next? What's out of reach that you've actually sectioned off as already impossible that we can actually help you bring into reality? And if that all sounds like something you're interested in, then go to yogahealer.com/dream.